Shalom, everybody. This is part 4 of the series that we've been discussing about the distinction between a nes, a miracle, and kishuf, sorcery of magic. Today's lesson is going to be very interesting. We're going to be talking about spirit possession and inspired speech of a Tzadik. Some of the things that we're going to cover is what is the be-panim of Malchut and what is the Achorayim Malchut, the face of Malchut and the back of Malchut. That's what we're going to see. It's where the evil spirits actually feed from the Achorayim of Malchut, which is the back of Malchut. Also, we're going to talk a little bit about the sources that give us the information about where these dark forces are coming from. Also, we're going to see what is the difference between these type of spirit possessions in which a person is possessed by a spirit and say things even about the future and all that, and the difference between that and a Tzadik, that it's speaking through the inspiration of a different spirit, a spirit that comes from Kedusha, a spirit that comes from purity. So join us after the introduction so we can start the lesson and touch this different aspect of this interesting lesson that we're going to have today. I'll see you after the introduction. Welcome back. In Kabbalah, the Kabbalists make a sharp distinction between spirit possession, which is called Ruach evil spirits, and also dibbuk, which is possession. Dibbuk is more like a impregnation of a spirit within a person, and the distinction between that and inspired speech of a Tzadik, which is dibur shel Tzadik. Though both involve the kind of an entry of a spirit into the human world, into the human also psychic, into the human speech, they are opposite in the origin and in the effect that they create in the environment that we live, whether it is the physical environment or the spiritual environment. So keep in mind these concepts as we go along, because we're going to be talking about the distinction of these two type of, let's say, kind of impregnation of the soul of a person. A dibbuk, which is impregnation of a evil spirit going into a human body and thus speaking through that human body, and also the dibur shel Tzadik, which is it's kind of like the entry, but it's not invasive, and we're gonna see how it is in a sense. One, like we have mentioned in previous lesson, what differences miracles from sorcery is the fact that in sorcery everything is forced, everything is kind of like coercion. We're coercing things to happen, we're coercing souls to do our will, while when it comes to miracles, we're not coercing anything. We're just submitting to the will of the Creator, and we become the source of that miracle in the physical realm, but it's because we're becoming the conduit. We're submitting ourselves to that flow of light that is supposed to come to the planet. In that sense, we become instruments of light. While in the other one actually uses the light, and specifically the light that is trapped in the darkness, as we're gonna see, in order to feed and to make things happen, not for the sake of heaven, but for the sake of our ego, for the sake of selfishness. And we're gonna see that as we go along. Now we're going to be talking about the differences. I'm going to talk about the sources where these things come from, so we can understand that this is not something that all of a sudden modern Kabbalists came up with. These are things that Kabbalists for already more than 2,000 years they've been talking about that, and we're going to see, that our biggest source is going to be the Torah, but we're going to be talking here about the sources after the Torah, when basically Kabbalah started being written down after the Zohar. So the first source that we're going to read is going to be from Etz Chaim, Sha'ar HaNevuah, the gate of prophecy. He says, "This is the mystery of Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit. It is the light of the Shechinah, resting upon the mouth of the Tzadik, and speaking from within him." And then further down, it's going to say that the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, does not disrupt consciousness like prophecy, but rather adds knowledge and illumination to the soul. An evil spirit, however, confuses the mind and weakens the soul. So it's giving you a distinction between three things: prophecy, Ruach HaKodesh, and a dibbuk, right? So what we're going to see is the Ruach, an evil spirit, is actually, as it feeds from the person. It confuses the mind, meaning, that if it is, and we're going to see in as we advance in this lesson, we're going to see that if the person is a person that try to attract one of these spirits, this spirit is going to make this person sin more, because the spirit is going to be feeding from the emotional and mental state of that person. And the more confused this person is, the more the spirit will be basically feeding from that person, and the more the spirit is going to become stronger. Now, the difference between the Ruach HaKodesh and prophecy is just, at that moment you lose yourself, and that moment you're talking about the word of God, and you're going to see the prophet saying, "This is what the Lord says," and it's like God talking through those people, right? They become a mouthpiece of God, of the Creator. While the Ruach HaKodesh is actually a kind of spirit that impregnates person and brings illumination, as it says there, and that's knowledge. So you're gonna see these a lot if you ever have the experience of being in front of one of these rabbis that teach Torah, and all of a sudden when they talk, you can feel that energy, that source. One of these examples can be, Rabbi Schneerson from Chabad, when he spoke, you can feel that energy. You can feel that there was something else, not just a human being talking, but there was the Holy Spirit working. And that's why, even though he was a rabbi, the Rebbe, as they call it, from Chabad, he touched a lot of lives, not only people that belong to Chabad and the Jewish people that belong to Chabad. It touches secular Jews, it touched Gentiles, and to this day his voice continues to touch a lot of people, because it was the inspiration of the Ruach HaKodesh that was actually talking through him. And these are things, that we need to keep in mind, the difference between a person that is possessed by an evil spirit and a person that is possessed by the Ruach HaKodesh. Now, spirit possession, on the other hand, we have information, the Sha'ar HaGilgulim, the gate of reincarnation. And he says, there are souls that are not worthy to enter a body at all, and they wander the world without rest, striving to attach themselves to a living person. That is what is called a dibbuk. So I remember when I was starting to study Kabbalah and they talk about this kind of spirit. It says that when God created the world, um, there were other creations, right, that were made, and some of these creations are actually what we call demons. And these demons, they are not incarnated. They don't have the right to have a body because of their nature. So they wander the world in order to acquire a body. And the only way they can acquire a body or incarnate into a body is by possessing the body, by possessing the person, by tricking the person also to accept them within themselves. And this is, what this kind of spirit does. There's also other kinds of spirit, not only demons. It's also people that did a lot of evil stuff in their lifetime, and when they die, their soul doesn't rest like a person that didn't do a lot. There's a process of purging for the soul, and these people haven't yet go through that process because they're so attached to this physical realm that they attach themselves also to people, and they strive on that. Let's call it this energy, the food energy that they receive from the people that they attach from, and they make these people do evil things, and this is something to keep in mind as well. Also, we need to keep in mind that this is a lesson that I'm gonna do as a second part of a talk that I had about Amalek when or after October 7th happened, and all this craziness that is happening against Israel and against the Jews and against people that had Judeo-Christian beliefs. And then we're going to talk about how these evil spirits, and not only these evil spirits, these other bigger souls are out there, souls of impurity that are out there, are at this moment in a war with humanity that is making humanity go against each other to the point that we may end up in a World War III. And we study already a social war between people dividing themselves through sexual preferences, through political spectrums and things like that. And at the end, we're going to see also nations going against each nation. We already see that between United Nations going against Israel, nations, talking about a state of Palestine without the Palestinian people having a proper government set up to take care of themselves. And also the Russia-Ukraine, the aligning of the Arab countries, especially Saudi Arabia, with major nuclear nation like Pakistan. Also, we're going to see India, China, all these other countries, aligning in certain way that we're going to see that things are falling into place according to prophecy. Prophecy meaning, one of these aspects of possession that is holy. In this case, prophecy is basically the shefa, the flow of information coming from the Creator itself. And we're going to see that we're fighting also in the social arena, not human beings that are evil, but human beings that are doing evil and say things and do weird things out there because they are being possessed. And how can we actually help these people, get away from that? It's going to be very hard, because social media is being a factor in promoting this type of behavior, and there's people that already have that little seed in them of a spirit actually trying to possess them, and then when they see that, oh, so that's good, and the spirit goes inside them, and then they become one of those demonic armies that are trying to destroy societies. Society, the family, start with the base of a society, which is the family. Then after that, the social networking, which is, people should be united as a society. They try to divide it into sexual preferences, into political preferences, and any other crazy things that they can invent. And then after that, destroying the government at itself of a country in order to bring it down. And that's the whole thing that these spirits are at this moment trying to get us into, to make civilization fail, so chaos can take over. Of course, all these things are happening, and I'm sorry I'm taking time, to talk about this before I make that lesson, but it's important to know these things are real and they're happening, and they have to do with what we're talking today. The spirits are trying to take over because people are not connected to each other properly. When they connect to each other properly, it's because there's something there for me to take in exchange, right? They're not doing it because of the idea of loving your neighbor as yourself. It's more about loving themselves, and they shall not put any other God before them, right? Instead of loving your neighbor as you love yourself. You gotta love yourself. A lot of people don't say that when they teach that kind of rule. You gotta love yourself, and according to how you love yourself is how you're gonna love your neighbor. If you hate yourself, you're gonna hate your neighbor. If you love yourself in a pure way, you're gonna love your neighbor in a pure way. If you love yourself in an egoistic and selfish way, that's how you're gonna also love your neighbor. You're gonna love your neighbor in a way that whatever you do for the neighbor is gonna be in exchange for something. So keep that in mind, okay? Now, let's talk about something that is very important, because we know that these evil spirits are out there, but where they come from, right? In Kabbalah, Malchut means kingship, right? It's sovereignty. It's the embodiment of speech, right? It's the pay, it's the mouth. Malchut is where words become things, right? It is how the soul expresses itself into the world. It just as cosmic Malchut has no light of her own, but channels higher Sephirot, so too our words and actions have no independent energy. They channel our inner states. Now, there's two aspects of Malchut. There's the be-panim, face of Malchut, and the Achorayim, the bulk of Malchut. The be-panim is the healthy state. It has an alignment. It's when Malchut is panim be-panim, face to face with higher Sephirot, especially Bina and Tiferet. That's when a person's speech and actions flow into clarity of purpose, because all the letters and sounds originate from Bina, but they're expressed to Ze'ir Anpin, and Malchut then make them into vibrations, into words to create, right? So when Malchut is in the state of face to face with, in this case, I say Malchut is in the bottom and Ze'ir Anpin is in the top. When they're face to face, meaning that Malchut is giving properly or receiving properly from Ze'ir Anpin, words feel true, connected, and empowering. The person has a sense of agency, dignity, and sovereignty. They feel enlightened. They feel that they have a mission. There is vitality in their presence. Their words can uplift others, just like I mentioned Rabbi Schneerson, right? From the Rebbe from Chabad. It's like a Tzadik whose mouth is the vessel for the Shechinah. Now, the psychological symptoms are going to be coherence, confidence, trust in life, and a sense of direction. There's this no confusion. There's a sense of where that person is leading others with the words that are being spoken. Now the Achorayim, the back of Malchut, is not a state that is healthy, it's a distorted state. And it's this connection. It's when Malchut turns her back, her Achorayim, and the flow of energy or inner Sefirot becomes concealed. Speech is cut off from the higher consciousness, and what you're going to experience is words feel empty, compulsive, and distorted. And we see that in society a lot today, right? The compulsiveness, the distortion of the truth, the emptiness in words. We don't read an article anymore. You just read the headlines, and that's information we get, and that's how we come with our confused conclusions about life, right? What we're gonna be experiencing is that the person may say things they don't mean, that they really don't mean it, but feel not themselves, or speak in ways that drain vitality. There's a loss of agency. Sometimes, you're gonna see that people say, I don't know how to say that, or they say, I can stop this, and they cannot stop it because they've been at that moment, connected to the Achorayim Malchut. That's where these evil spirits feed from, right? And you're gonna see this compulsiveness. They're talking, the way they express themselves can be equivalent to a person that belongs to sanatorium, right? Instead of being in society, they should be locked up and being taken care of until they become themselves again. And you see that. The psychological symptoms is the confusion, inner fragmentation. That's why you're going to see people that see themselves as they, because it's in reality they. There's inner fragmentation. They're fragmented. The personality is not one, it's many. There's compulsions, speech without meaning. When they talk about a concept, you ask them to explain the concept. They don't even know what the concept is all about. And this is the opening where unclean forces, these negative habits, intrusive thoughts, or in extreme cases, the possession, the dibbukim, cling from. And we're going to see, that this is something that we need to pay attention, because it's happening a lot in society these days, okay? And Sha'ar HaGilgulim, that Arizal says that an evil spirit confuses the mind and weakens the soul, right? And this is what happened to these people that are connected to these evil forces that are possessed by these evil spirits. These people sometimes possess because they want to be possessed. Not really. Sometimes, it happened because they just hanging out with the wrong people, and they're getting information from the wrong people, and they surround themselves in an environment that promotes that kind of behavior, and thus they become easy targets for this evil spirit to get in, right? Now, let's talk about examples of everyday examples of when a person is connected, or when Malchut is be-panim, face to face with the upper realm. So when we have Malchut be-panim, Malchut receiving properly from Ze'ir Anpin and Bina, a person comforts a friend. I am here for you. You're not alone. And these words carry light, healing, and strength. And you can see, when a person that is connected to a good spirit, right? They help other people. They lift up other people with words. And sometimes those words are enough for the other person to snap out and be once again, a useful individual in society. Speech is connected to the inner compassion, which is Bina, and expressed with clarity through the mouth, Malchut, the face, right? Now, on the other hand, on the other side of the spectrum, we have the Achorayim, the back. A person in this state blurts out harsh words in anger. You'll never succeed. You don't belong to us. You're not one of us. You're going to see all these things. And they see the other. It doesn't matter if the other means well. They see the other as the enemy because the other one is not like me. Is not like me. And in reality, it's true. The other person is going to be attached to forces that are not from the root of evil, and this person is attached from the root of evil, and these spirits are going to do whatever it takes to survive and stay in that state in which they're like a leash feeding from this person. And these type of words that the person is spitting out their mouth at that moment, these words carry shadow, draining vitality. The speech is disconnected from the inner truth, leaving a residue of shame or hurt. And this is where these spirit forces feed from, to make sure that nothing good come out, and nothing good also comes from the result of the words. Now, there's an avodah, there's an inner work that we can do in order not to fall into that deception from these evil forces, and is the practice of guarding our speech. It's called Shemirat Halashon. And intentional prayer helps us about keeping Malchut in a state of be-panim, so the Shechinah can dwell in our mouth, in our words when we speak. When we fall into the Achorayim, the backside of Malchut, the tikkun is teshuvah, return, right? Repentance, as it is translated as well. We need to reconnect the speech to its higher source. This higher source is Bina. And we do that through going or practicing guarding our tongue, and also be aware that we need to connect to Malchut, panim be-panim, face to face with Ze'ir Anpin in order to receive from Bina, right? So what we need to keep in mind is the panim of Malchut. It's words and action aligned with soul, clarity, and divine presence. While the Achorayim Malchut, it's words and action that are disconnected, they're compulsive, draining, they confuse people, they have chaos, fragmentation, and they're an opening for external forces to come into a person. So this is something to keep in mind as we study this. Now, let's go to some of the sources. Let's read from Pri Etz Chaim, Sha'ar HaGilgulim, by Rabbi Chaim Vital, the words of the Arizal. It says, the Qlippot draw from the Achorayim of Malchut, for she has no light of her own except what she receives from Ze'ir Anpin. When she does not receive face to face, then the externals extend from her backside. So this is just something that we just talked about, right? How if Malchut is not face to face with Ze'ir Anpin, and in order to receive the flow that comes from Bina, then the external forces can cling to a person, and this person can become basically possessed by these evil forces. In Sha'ar HaPesukim, Parsha Bereshit, says when Malchut is in concealment of the face, then her backside becomes a place of nourishment for the Sitra Achra. The Sitra Achra is the other side. And something to keep in mind is the way that Kabbalists talk about these evil forces. It talks about the other side, the Sitra Achra. And it doesn't say that is something that doesn't belong to the system. It's part of the system, but it's the other side. It's a mirror system, but this mirror system is of shadows, right? In the Zohar, mentions that Malchut without her face revealed is the place where the external forces rule. So external forces always going to be these forces that are darkness, forces that are or makes a person be selfish, a person confused. The forces that are internal are different. These internal, what they call internal sephirot, are the ones that are less egoistic. Those sephirot are connected more with the source of light. In Pri Etz Chaim, it says that one must entrust his soul into the hand of Holy Malchut when reciting the Bet Shema, so that the external forces do not seize her from the Achorayim. And this is very important to do because when we do this in the bedtime Shema, this is for protection, as I said. We're basically sealing ourselves into this protective cocoon, for lack of words, right? And what it does is it aligns Malchut in Kedusha, blocking the Qlippot's access to her backside, okay? And Sha'ar HaGilgulim mentions that souls that have no rest go and attach themselves to a living person, and their sustenance is from the Achorayim of Malchut, where she has no light of face. Here, the possession is directly tied to the Achorayim of Malchut as a source of sustenance, as we mentioned. So we're going to see is the Etz Chaim, Sha'ar HaQlippot, Zohar, Pri Etz Chaim, Sha'ar HaGilgulim. They talk about this subject. And Etz Chaim, Sha'ar HaQlippot, as we read, talks about that the Qlippot feeds from the Achorayim of Malchut. The Zohar is telling us that Malchut without her face is where the external rule. The Pri Etz Chaim says that prayer aligns Malchut to, so unclean forces cannot cling to her back. And the Sha'ar HaGilgulim here, it says that dibbukim, which is the spirit possessions, attach and draw life from Malchut of Achorayim. So what we need to keep in mind is the face of Malchut, vessel of the Shechinah, and Ruach HaKodesh. The back of Malchut is where the Qlippot are, and that's where these evil spirits come from, and they feed from there, from the Qlippot, and they are the ones that do the possession of a person. Now, let's go through the aspects of both of these type of entry of a soul into a person: spirit possession, the dibbuk, and the Ruach HaKodesh, right? Which is a speech inspired by a Tzadik. So let's dive deeper so we can understand it. And the first thing that we're going to talk is about the book. All right, and make sure you pay attention to the table I put. Let me get myself over there. So possession, the book or Ruach Ra, comes from the Sitra Achra, the other side, and rectifies spirits or fragments of broken souls that have not found rest, as we saw that is described in Sha'ar HaGilgulim of the Arizal. These forces attach themselves to a person against his or her will, often exploiting inner spiritual weakness, trauma, or sin. The speech of or action is compelled, distorted, and out of alignment with holiness. These people act like if they were crazy, like they needed some kind of psychological, psychiatric help. While on the other hand, we're going to see the inspired speech of a Tzadik, meaning when the Ruach HaKodesh inspires a Tzadik, a person, flows from the side of holiness, Kedusha. A Tzaddik's words are vessels from divine influx, the Shefa, the light that comes directly from the Creator, and his Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama are purified and harmonized. The Tzadik speaks with no intention to confuse. There's clarity, there's direction, and this direction is towards the Creator. And when the Tzadik speaks with his mouth, he's speaking with his soul. His words become channels for Ruach HaKodesh, sometimes even carrying prophetic resonance. We're going to see this on the Zohar. Mentions that the Shechinah speaks through the mouth of the Tzadik. It says, now, when it comes to consciousness and control, when a person is possessed, the possessed person often loses autonomy. The body of this person start doing gestures that are not normal. The speech is hijacked. There is no conscious partnership with the invading force. It creates confusion, fear, and imbalance in that person, and also in other people, because the soul can possess a person and influence other people. So it can possess more than one body at that moment. While the Tzadik inspired speech does the opposite. The Tzadik remains fully conscious and aligned. The divine light integrates with the awareness, the da'at of that person, so the inspiration strengthens his own soul instead of displacing it. Rather than being taken over, he's pure illumination, right? He not only gets illuminated, but he also share this light with others. So just like the other person that is in a possession, can get this negative force to inside, and this force make that person do negative things and influence other people to do negative things. So the Tzadik inspired speech does the same thing. When the Tzadik receives this light become words, and these words influence other people and become actually the words become light by itself. Now the Kabbalistic symbolism behind possession and inspired speech. In a possession, we're going to see that possessions are linked to the Qlippot, husks that feed or misplace energy, right? A dibbukim is literally a clinging, a shell, right? So the dibbukim is basically the soul goes in, and the body becomes a shell that this evil spirit is feeding from. Inspired speech, we're going to see that is linked to the Shechinah resting upon the Tzadik, right? So this is the inverse of possession. Instead of a husk seizing a vessel, the vessel opens itself willingly to divine light. So what we need to keep in mind is possession equals distorted entry of foreign spirit, loss of selves, and a source of impurity. Tzadik's inspired speech is a sanctified flow of divine spirit and deepened self, and is a source of holiness. All right. Now, both of these involve a voice beyond the ordinary self, but one is a corruption of the process, while the other one perfects the process. It perfects the connection with the divine. So one basically is kind of like sabotages the process of connecting with the self, and with the self connecting with our holy nature, right? While the other one, which is the Tzadik, right, the Ruach HaKodesh, it edifies that. It makes that connection stronger. It makes that connection, better. And the more we connect, a lot of people think, what changing myself is gonna do to the whole world. Just one person among millions and millions of people. Believe it or not, one person connecting to the source of all is more light in this world, right? You can be probably in the middle of 50 unrighteous person, but if you're the only person that is bringing light, a match inside darkness, right? Spread a lot of light, right? Darkness cannot overtake that match. So that's what you need to understand. You're one person among many, but one person can make a big difference. So let's talk a little bit about how this type of possession has to do with the Sefirot, the mapping, the tree of life that we talk, the Kabbalistic tree of life. And also we're going to see how the speech of Tzadik, Ruach HaKodesh, right, has to do with the same. And we already know about Malchut, right, the Achorayim, and also the be-panim, the backside and the face. Also, the spirit possession, the dibbuk, is rooted in the Qlippot, as we have mentioned before. And these Qlippot emerge from something called Ze'ir Anpin, the shattering of the vessels. And I'm not going to go over what happened, but what happened was when God started the process of creation, He made a restriction. Then after that restriction, there was a second restriction, and then after that, the vessels that were more egoistic, because they have this kind of regime, this kind of imprint in them, they wanted the light, but they were not ready. So when they received the light, they broke. And this little spark of light are now trapped in something called the Qlippot, which is the dark side of the bottom, very bottom of this creation. And these unrectified sparks cling to the backside, the Achorayim of the Sefirot, especially Malchut of Qlippot. Because remember, we're talking about mirror systems, one of the shadows and one of the light. So these spirits, instead of light flowing down through the Sephirotic chain, a dibbuk siphons life force literally and becomes like a parasite, attaching itself to weak vessels. In this case, weak people. Weak people, I mean, when I say weak people, I'm talking about weak souls that are in confusion. And from the energy standpoint, it represents misaligned Malchut, receiving from the other side instead of receiving from holiness. Okay? Now, the Etz Chaim in Sha'ar HaGilgulim, we read that the Qlippot draws sustenance from the backside of Malchut, for she has no light of her own except what she receives. So when Malchut is not receiving from Ze'ir Anpin, meaning be-panim, be-panim, it's not shining. It's like the moon. It cannot shine without the sun shining light into it, right? So this is what happened to Malchut. So Malchut becomes dark, and that's where these shadow forces feed from. Now the inspired speech of a Tzadik, we call Ruach HaKodesh, it is rooted on what we call the flow of Bina. It comes from a flow that originates in Bina, goes to Ze'ir Anpin, and eventually connects to Malchut in holiness. The Tzadik becomes a vessel of the Shechinah, which is Malchut, the Kedusha. And the Tzadik then receives directly from Bina's higher understanding. Remember, Bina means understanding, so there's a higher understanding in here, and it's the understanding of that from creation, from the Creator. The mouth of the Tzadik symbolically becomes a Malchut on earth, which is the mouth of God in the world, right? Pri Adonai, the mouth of God. Here, the light descends in order and in balance, clothing itself in the Tzadik's da'at and speech without damaging his vessel. So it's not a breaking of the soul, personal soul. It's basically the soul becoming a vessel of this light that flows from Bina through Ze'ir Anpin to Malchut. Where do we see this? In Etz Chaim, Sha'ar HaNevuah, it says, from the Shechinah itself descends and for the Shechinah itself descends and clothes itself in the mouth of man, and then his speech is speech of above. So this is so to finish this, I want you to, after having this, having actually seen this lesson, to look around what's happening in the world, what's happening in society, what's happening to us internally, and see what, compare with this, what we have just learned, and see what's really happening out there. We're not dealing with people, we're dealing with forces that we don't see. And it's very important to understand this, because then we can understand what's going on in the world, what is going on in our society, what is going on with the family, and what is going on with the individual. Okay, so I hope that this lesson has clarified some of these differences between them two. And one of the things that you're going to be asking is, probably you thought that I was going to talk about people that are doing these senses, in which they sit down and they call a spirit upon them and that kind of stuff. That is part of it. That is part of it. The only difference is that in this case they're calling dead people. Here we're talking about spirits, right? We're talking about spirit possession, spirits that have not incarnated into a body, never. But they're looking for a body so they can have that experience. But because they come from chaos, that's why they're creating the word chaos. And they possess living beings, in this case humans, in order to create that chaos in the physical realm. And what we need to do is, like it says here, practice what is called restriction of the tongue. Practice good speech. Try to bless all the time. When we see something, do a blessing. When we see a person in need, be there with words of comfort. When we are in psychological, in a psychological storm, because we're also gonna be in need, right? Especially in this world that we're living. We live in a world that is stressful. We don't know if tomorrow a new war is gonna, come in. If we don't know if tomorrow we're gonna go out, like it happened to a lot of people. We happen to be in the middle of a tragic event and things like that. So what we need to do is to be constantly, not only when we see something great in nature or when we're eating, do blessings and be thankful for what we have in life, but also to pray. Prayer is a good way to keep ourselves from having connection to these evil spirits. We become protected by the light to a point that they cannot even touch us, right? And that's what we need today. We need less criticism of each other and more dialogue with each other. We need more seeing each other as one than seeing each other as different, whether it is because of our political ideas, whether it is because of our sexual preferences, whether it is because of our national origin, whether it is because of our race. If you really look around, we're trying to pay more attention to the things that divide us than to the things that unite us. We're all humans. We all share the same planet, and we all have the same needs and wants, and what Kabbalah is trying to teach is the only way we can achieve happiness in this world is by loving each other, by becoming one. And the only way we can become one is by each of us starting to do our own avodah, our own work. And one way to do that is by practicing the restriction of the tongue. If it doesn't edify, don't say anything. Once you say, as the Kabbalists teach, your words become angels. But also, when you talk, you don't only create angels, you can also create demons, evil angels, right? That are going to create chaos. So be careful what you say out there. Another way to connect to the Ruach HaKodesh is by studying. Read books of different teachers, tzaddikim, and connect to this force that they represent. And because a tzaddik lived, let's say, 300 years ago, 500 years ago, that does not mean you cannot connect to the light that tzaddik represented. Like I mentioned in the lesson before, you don't have to visit the grave of a tzaddik in order to connect to its light. By studying the tzaddik's Torah, the teachings of that tzaddik, you connect to the light of that person, and in that way, elevate yourself. And that's something that you can practice to try always to read books that edify you. Try to see things in social media, which is a platform of where these evil forces are exploiting and making more chaos in the world. You can also find there things that are of the light. So look for them. Promote them. Not just look at it and that's it, promote it. Right? That's why you're going to see, in the beginning of this channel and all the channels, you're going to see the like button and share and that kind of stuff, because these are tools that we can use to spread the light. The more like you give, the more things you're going to receive from the algorithm, the better also for the channel that you're watching, whether it is this channel or other channel that teaches Kabbalah. Because now the algorithm is going to present this to more people. And also, when you share it, you're actually spreading the light. You receive something, and now you're giving back, right? Whether it's with a like or sharing. So make sure you share the light. That's another way to spread the light. That's another way to fight back these forces, and to make sure that more people get influenced by the light and not by the craziness that is going out there with this dibbukim that are happening right now in our society. So I hope you like this lesson. The next lesson is going to be interesting as well. It's going to be about medium summoning. That's when we're going to be talking about people sitting down and channeling dead people or spirits. And urim ve-tumim, even though we don't practice this today because we don't have a temple, we can still connect to the forces of the urim ve-tumim. And we're going to see how that works again in our next lesson. So please join us on our next lesson. Thank you for being in this lesson, and I'll see you. Shalom.